economics. And then I pursue my master degree in the Australian National University, Canberra, Australia, and graduated at 2011. And Alhamdulillah, I already finished my PhD degree from IIUM. And so in labor market and public policy and policy for our lecture, I will take part one topic in the labor market, effect of international trade and production sharing, since my research interest is in international trade. Okay, thank you very much. I hope I could take part in this course, and we can learn together and discuss together, and hopefully will fruitful to everyone. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tia Titis, Mr. Romi, Mr. Asti. So, do we have Mr. Susilo with us? Oh, I don't think so.
I haven't seen his name.
Yeah, we haven't seen, but hopefully we'll meet him on the module 3. So you will meet with Mr. Susilo. And in this, what is it? In this synchronize, we also put in the YouTube live, so do not need to be worried if you want to reread or rewatch again. Yeah, this synchronous session, you can see it in YouTube. I will share you the link after this. Okay, since today we will have Mr. Asti and also Mr. Romi, so I will put Mr. Asti as the host and also Mr. Romi as the co-host. Okay, time is yours, Mr. Asti, and we would like to apologize. I would like to send you apology because I cannot like what is that? Coming with you in this session because I also have another workshop with me, and I'm really sorry that I cannot join with you, but hopefully we can meet again tomorrow, okay, with Professor Antonio and also Mr. Asti as the moderator. Okay, to make it efficiently, I will give the time to Asti. Over to you, Asti.
Okay, thank you very much for the introductions. Let me share my screen now. Okay, can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, so well, today's lecture it's going to be about the two fundamental frameworks, which is about the labor supply and labor demand. And later, after the break, there will be a continuous sessions, which is going to be about labor market equilibrium, and also some empirical study which Mr. Romi is going to present after me. But for the first sessions right now, it's only about the labor supply and the labor demand. And I would like to say that in my part here, so this is since I'm going to talk most of the time about the framework or the theoretical approach. I have to say that well, for some people it's going to be a little bit boring because it's all about theoretical, but it is going to be a very important informations or very important knowledge in order to understand what is the behind about labor economics. Okay, so before I start, I would like to say welcome everyone to the fourth ITYIELDs. It has been a very good event each year from the Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. And I think it is going to be very useful for students, especially in students from economics, because one of the course, as far as I know, one of the course in many universities teach about labor economics in economics department. Okay, so let me start. So we will start as I mentioned before. I will start from the first material, which is about the labor supply. And before we go through deeper about this, labor supply, first I would like to remind you about this graph. Okay, about this diagram. I hope that everyone ever saw this graph before, especially for those who have taken introduction or microeconomics, or I don't know, in macroeconomics, but usually you will see this diagram, this graph in the introductions of macroeconomics. And this diagram talks about the economic flow. So we have two markets here. So the markets that we usually learn in most of the study in economics, usually in the goods and service markets. Goods and service market is simply a market that you, let's say you are a consumer, you want to buy, let's say you want to buy a goods such as, let's say, a mobile phone, or you want to buy a food, or you want to hire a service, or you want to go to the bank for a transactions. That's all kind of, you know, transactions are happening in the good and service markets here. You as a consumer, you are belong to households here, and firm here act as a producer in the good and service market. Okay, so in here, in this market, you have the money and the firm have the products. You give the money in the good and service market, or usually we call it output market. You give the money to the firm in this market, and the firm give the products to you through this market as well. So there is, like, you know, a transactions between household as a consumer and firm as a producer in the goods and services markets. However, since we are going to talk about labor economics, we are not going to talk about the markets that we just, you know, that I just explained to you. We're not going to talk the market that it's goods and services market. No, instead we are going to talk the market that is called a factor market here. Okay, so that's the difference. So we don't trade stuffs, or we don't trade food, or we don't trade like cars or something like that, but something else here that I later going to explain to you. And this is where the game is played, okay, in the factor markets. In here, the actors are still the same, households and firms, but the act, like, you know, the role here is different. As I mentioned to you, in the good and service markets, the consumers are from the household and the producer are from the firms. In the factor markets, it's going to be the other way around. So the households here are the producer, the firms are the consumer. Okay, so in this case, the households here, since they are a producer in the factor market, they are selling a service. Okay, so since they are a producer, they are selling their skills, for example, they are selling their knowledge, they are selling their time to the firm through the factor markets. And the firm buy the service from the households. In this case, the firm have to pay the household through the factor markets that we usually call the wage, okay, or the income of the consumer or the income of the households here, okay. So in this case, that's what we are going to talk until like the end of this course. So there's interactions between households and firm in the factor markets. Okay, let me tell you, if I go too fast, or if any one of you would like to raise the questions, please just tell me. Okay, just tell me right away. And I'm sorry that since I'm going to focus on my slides, I will not be able to, uh, to get to rate the questions from the chats. Okay, so please, if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, please just ask directly to me. I will happily to answer your questions. Okay, so um, in this framework, okay, since we are talking about labor supply, we are going to start a we are going to start the framework by using a worker's preference. So in this case, let me get back to the previous slides. In good and service markets here, household act, or the role of household is as a consumer. And the goal as a consumer in terms of microeconomics, the goal of a consumer is to maximize their utility. Okay, so I have to maximize, me as a consumer, I want to maximize my utility by consuming something. Okay, in the factor market, I'm going to act as a producer. In order to maximize my utility in the good and service market, I will have to consume. In order to consume, I need money, right? It's, there is no such thing as a free lunch. So I have to buy something, and in order to be able to buy, I need money. And money doesn't fall from the trees. I have to work in order to get the money. So in the factor markets, this is where I work to earn money. Therefore, based on the framework, okay, I have my goal still the same. So my goal is to maximize my utility, or in other words, my well-being. That's what everyone's goal as a consumers. Okay, so in order to maximize, I have to consume something here. But there is a little bit of modifications. Okay, so in this case, in this framework, okay, I have two choices. So when we talk about the consumer theory in microeconomics, the choice of household in good and service markets, it's between, for example, whether I buy coffee or I buy tea, whether I buy apple or I buy mango. But the choice in the factor market here, it's a little bit different. It's either I buy or I consume goods, or I choose leisure activity. Okay, leisure activity. I will talk in detail about this trade-off. Okay, let's say I choose a goods. If I choose to buy or consume goods, I can buy these goods in the marketplace, which is in here. Okay. Otherwise, if I choose leisure, okay, if I choose leisure, it means that I can just relax and enjoy something that it's not let's say just stay at home and do nothing which I don't earn money. Okay, so that's going to be a trade-off. Whether you work, you get earnings, you get income, you get a wage, and you can use the money to buy a good, or I just stay at home without doing anything. That's the trade-off. Since we are since uh, labor supply starts from the framework in order to that which the goal is to maximize the utility. Therefore, I will start with the workers' preferences. Okay. So as a worker, what is the preferences of the worker? Okay. So in order to analyze, this labor supply behavior for each individual in the household, uh, the terms that we use in here is the neoclassical model of labor leisure choice. Okay. The aim is to isolate and determine whether a particular persons choose to work and how many hours should he or she works. Okay, so at this point, just imagine yourself, you have to work, okay, whether you have to work or not. And if you have to work, how many hours would you work? Okay, so that's that's the situation is you have to determine the number of hours that you would like to work in order to earn money. Okay, and also we are going to present this trade-off, okay, between consumption of goods and the consumptions of leisure. So let's say you choose C here. Okay, let's say you choose C. It means that you have to work first and then earn money, and then you are able to consume goods. If you don't work, you cannot consume goods, but you have a pleasure to do a leisure activity. Okay. In this case, since C or a consumption of goods here, it's not a particular goods, or it's not a singular good, but in this framework, C, it is aggregated value of all goods. So it's not like I consume apple, or I consume mango, or I consume clothes. No, it's not like that. But the value, the total value that I consume. For example, my total value of consumptions, let's say this week is $50, or perhaps in rupiah, this week I spend all my consumptions equals to, let's say, 500,000 rupiah. Okay, so that's the value. Not the consumptions that I do this week is I buy rice, I buy a chicken, I buy phone credits, and so on. No, not like that. So, but the total value when the the number of the goods multiplied by the prices. Okay, so that's the value. So that's what we denote C in this case. And the variable L here gives the number of hours of leisure that a person can consume during the same time period. Okay, I know this uh, a bit abstract to you. Okay, you have to imagine this, but I will give you an illustration by using a graph. Okay, I hope everyone have ever seen this graph. This graph called the indifference curve. Uh, well, most of the students, well, I was a student as well, so I know about this. And you have learned this in perhaps in microeconomics. So after introduction microeconomics, you take class microeconomics, or in some universities they call it microeconomics 1. And in that course, you learn about indifference curve. Okay, that's what we call it. Indifference means it's not different, so it's the same. What is the same here? So I will explain you a little bit about the indifference curve itself. Indifference curve, it's a curve or a graph that shows the same utility level as you move along the same in the same curve. So for example, in here, okay, in this graph, the utility level, if you choose at point X, and the utility level, if you choose at point Y, it's going to be the same. Okay, it's, you know, the level of utility is the same. Whether you choose X or Y, it doesn't matter. Your utility level, it's still going to be 25,000 utils, for example. Okay, now we are going to talk about this in terms of labor economics. So we denote utility function as U, okay, to measure the individual's level of satisfaction or happiness or well-being, whatever you like to call it. But usually we call it a utility, satisfaction, or happiness. It is a function of C and L. It means that the utility level, okay, the happiness, the satisfaction here is determined by the C, okay, the value of consumption, and the L, which is the leisure activities. Okay, in this case, the higher the U, the happier the persons. Okay, depicted by this graph. Okay, when you move to that direction, okay, move to the right, upper right directions. Okay, let me just a little bit draw it. Is it possible for me to? Okay, let's say, can you see? I cannot do it. The pen. I want to graph, but it doesn't work, I think. No, it doesn't work. Okay. Okay. So when the indifference curve here, okay, move to the right upper sides here, okay, it shows us, okay, it shows us that the utility level or the satisfaction level or the happiness level is getting higher. Okay, as we can see here from this picture. Okay, I told you that whether you choose X and Y, it doesn't matter. Okay, you still get 25,000 utils. But when you choose point Z instead, you will get a higher utility level, which is 40,000 utils. Okay, so in this case, the assumption that has to be held is buying more goods or devoting more hours of leisure activities increase the person's utility. Okay, and let me explain to you about the axis here. Okay, this is very important. This is very fundamental. On the horizontal axis here, it shows us about the hours of leisure. Okay, so this is just simply the number of hours: 100 hours, 125 hours, 150 hours. Okay, and for the vertical axis here, okay, it shows us the value of consumption. So not the number of product that you buy, but the value of the products that you buy. It's a different thing. Okay, I have already explained to you. It's not how many apples do you buy, but what is the value of the apples that you buy. Okay, so it's already been multiplied by the price of the goods. So in here, it's, let's say, $500, $450, and $400. So in point X here, for example, the consumer, or in here, the worker, okay, he consumed $400, okay, in total, and he has 125 hours for leisure activities. Okay, for point Y, he has 100 hours of leisure. Okay, he has less leisure time compared to point X, but he can earn more so that he can consume more goods, which is $500. Okay, so let's say it's like a trade-off. Okay, whether you are in point Y or in point X. Okay, if you would like to choose more leisure than working, therefore, okay, you have more time for leisure, but you only be able to earn less or to consume less goods in here. But if you choose to work more at point Y, okay, you have less time for leisure, but you can earn more, which is $500. No questions? Okay. In point Z here, okay, in point Z, this is like, this is what we wish for. Okay, this is what we wish for. In point Z, we have a higher time of leisure, okay, compared to X. And also we have a higher value of consumptions compared to X here. Okay, so this is what everyone wish to do: more leisure, more money. Okay, that's why in this case, okay, the higher the indifference curve, the higher the utility level. Okay, so is everyone's individual, or sorry, is everyone indifference curves looks the same? That's the question. Is my indifference curve is going to be the same as your indifference curve? That's the big question. The answer is no. We because we are not the same. Okay, we always have a difference indifference curve. Our indifference curve, it's never be the same for each individual. However, in general, we can divide two types of indifference curve. Okay, this is in extreme case. Okay, in extreme case, of course, in the reality, it's not always like this, but theoretically, we can make it general in extreme case. So, for example, here we have seen this indifference curve, and we have mean this indifference curve. From the picture, okay, from the picture here, we can see that the seen this indifference curve looks relatively steeper, but mean this indifference curve looks relatively flatter. Okay, so it's only whether it is relatively more steeper or more flatter, like the in difference curve here. So what is the difference? Okay, so what is the difference? All right, before I explain what is the difference, not only in terms of the, the picture, okay, the flatter or the steeper, not only that, I have to explain to you first about the marginal utility. Okay, marginal utility. What is marginal utility? Okay, in economics, in particular in macroeconomics, the terms of marginal utility is defined as the additional utility by consuming something. Okay, let me explain it to you again. Marginal utility. So I mean, the explanation that I say to you here, it's the informal one. So why in the informal one? Because to make it easier for you to understand. Okay, you can see the formal definition of marginal utility from the books. However, I just would like to explain it in the simple way. So marginal utility, okay, it's the additional utility that the person get by consuming something. Okay, marginal means it's the additional. Okay, so if in case and is anyone don't know the meaning of marginal, which in economics we always encounters a lot of terms that using a marginal. Okay, marginal means an additional. Okay, additional marginal utility, so it's additional utility that we get, okay, by consuming something in terms of consumer theory. In labor supply points of view, we have two types of marginal utility. The first marginal utility we call the marginal utility of leisure. Okay, marginal utility leisure is the additional utility that the person get, that I get, by consuming more or additional time of leisure. Okay, so for example, just for example here, okay, how many additional of happiness, okay, let me use the terms of happiness because it's more human, I think. How many additional happiness that I get by sleeping, by adding one more hour of sleeping? Okay, let's say I have sleep for 5 hours and I got, an alarm on my phone that wakes me up, and I choose to plan to have an 1 hour additional 1 hour of sleeping, and how many utility that I will get from this 1 hour additional of sleeping. Okay, and sleeping in here can be, categorized in the leisure activity. Okay, how happy I am that I can get 1 more hour of sleeping. That is the idea behind the marginal utility of leisure. So mathematically, I mean, this situation can be can be uh, can be expressed by using a mathematical approach. Okay, I'm not sure whether everyone in here like mathematics, but for me, mathematics, it's not a problem. Mathematics is, helping me to understand these situations. So from these equations, okay, we can see here the symbol, like, like D here, okay, the symbol that looks like 6 but in reverse, it shows us the change, okay, the change of U is a utility, divided by the change, okay, of leisure activity, in particular the time of activity. And when we increase the number of time for leisure activities, the denominator, the level of utility will change and it will also increase. Okay, it will also go up. Okay, if we increase L, okay, the utility level also increase. That's why we call it MUL, or the marginal utility of leisure. The same thing for the marginal utility of consumptions. Okay, so mathematically, the change in U divided by the change of C. Okay, in words, when when you consume more products, okay, the higher the value of consumption that you consume, the utility level will change. Okay, in particular, it will go up, or it will increases. Okay, we call it the marginal utility of consumption. When we make a ratio, okay, when we make a ratio between marginal utility of leisure and the marginal utility of consumption, okay, in here, we get MRS. Okay, what is MRS? MRS is the marginal rate of substitution. Let me say that to you again. When we make a ratio between MUL and MUC, okay, marginal utility of leisure and marginal utility of consumption, we get MRS. MRS means marginal, or it stands for marginal rate of substitution. What is marginal rate of substitution? Marginal rate of substitution is the slope, okay, is the slope of an indifference curve. Okay, when you make a ratio between MUL and MUC here, there is a negative sign. Okay, what it means? It means that whether you choose a leisure or consumption, you have to sacrifice one of the other. Okay, so let me get back to this graph. Let's focus on point X and Y. If you choose X, it means that you have to sacrifice consumption in order to get more leisure. If you choose at point Y, you have to sacrifice the hours of leisure in order to get more consumption. So that is why the relationship between the marginal utility of leisure and the marginal utility of consumption is negative. Okay, they are between leisure time and consumptions. They are pulling each other. Okay, any questions? Okay, no. Okay, well, let me explain about this graph. So what is the difference between here and Mendes indifference curve? The difference is simply the slope, the MRS. Okay, the MRS is different between Mendes indifference curve and Mendes indifference curve. Okay, in Mendes indifference curve, okay, where the indifferent curve is relatively flatter, steeper. Okay, this since these preferences, okay, since these preferences, it seems that Cindy would like to work more than to have more leisure. Okay, So let me get back. Let me say that to you again. Okay. In this case, Cindy have a uh, steeper indifference curve. It means that, okay, Cindy have to sacrifice a lot of value of consumption in order to get more leisure. Okay, so I wish I can draw this. Uh, like okay, I can. Can you see it? Can
Yeah.
everyone see it? Okay, good. Okay. So let me just, well, it's very hard to draw with the mouse. I'm using a mouse here. Um, okay, let me do this. Okay, okay, you can see a triangle here. Okay, so this is a, like, just imagine that this is a triangle. Okay, this is a straight line, and this is also a straight line. This is a vertical straight line, and this is a horizontal straight line. In this case, okay, let's focus on seeing this indifference curve. In this case, okay, uh, in order to have a little time of leisure, Cindy has to sacrifice a lot of consumption. As we can see, the length of this vertical here, okay, is longer than the length of this horizontal line here. So let's say, okay, oh, sorry. Let's say this is point Y, okay. This is point Y, just like in the previous one. And this is point X, okay. So let me do this, make a line here. Okay, as we can see here, okay, let's say um this is L1, this is L2, okay, and um this is C1, and this is C2. Okay, sorry um for the bad uh handwriting. As I told you, I'm using mouse, so it's really hard to do this. Okay, all right. So in this case, okay, Cindy value, or let's say the price in order to have more leisure in here is higher, okay, than the one in mean this indifference curve. Why? Because in order to move, let's say from Y to X, in order to move from L1 to L2, Cindy has to sacrifice a lot of consumption here. So from C1 is C2 is a really big shift, okay, from C1 to C2 in order to get a little time of leisure, okay. But if we put it the other way around, okay, Cindy only can only sacrifice a little bit of time of leisure in order to get a higher level of consumption, okay. So in here, in the situation of Cindy here, the price in order let's say the price of sleeping is very high. Okay, so like just in economics, just if you only want to sleep, it's costly. Okay, there is a price in order to just sleeping. In reality, maybe, well, it's easy for me to sleep. I don't have a cost. I just have to close my eyes. Well, it's not like that. When you close your eyes, at the same time you sacrifice a time, right, which you can use it to do a productive activity, and that is the cost. And that's what we are talking about right now. Okay, so more leisure, less consumption. Okay, less leisure activity, you get more consumption. By this graph, you can see that here you have to sacrifice a lot of consumption in order to get a little time of leisure, but you can sacrifice a little time of leisure in order to get more consumption. Okay, so probably in reality, Cindy lives um, in, let's say, perhaps like in Indonesia, Cindy lives in Jakarta. Okay, people who works in Jakarta, they have a higher salary, but they have a little time for leisure. Okay, because of the crowd, the traffic jams, and all that stuff. Okay, you cannot have a high time for a leisure activity when you work, let's say like in the city of Jakarta. Okay, what about mean distance difference curve? The mean distance difference curve, okay, it's the opposite. Okay, let me do the same thing. Okay, okay, so this is C1, this is C2, this is L1, and this is L2. Okay, so the situation is reversed. Mindy here, okay, in order to have more time of leisure, Mindy here can only sacrifice a little time of works, okay, a little time of works, or a little value of consumption in order to get, a high time or a lot of time of leisure here. Okay. However, if Mindy would like to earn more in order to get more consumption, Mindy have to sacrifice a lot of her time of leisure. Okay. So in this case, Mindy have to work, have to spend a lot of her time in order to get more consumption, which is, the incremental of her consumption is not really high. Okay. So probably this is like people who lives in, let's say, in the rural area. Okay. Well, not always a rural area, but in the city, where the city is not so big, where the business is not like, in the metropolitan. So people have to sacrifice a lot of their leisure time in order just to get a little increase of their consumption. So that is what the situation of Mindy encounter in this graph. Okay. Well, when we talk about the consumption, we also talk about the budget constraint. Okay, so people always have a budget constraints. So the budget constraints here, what is the budget constraints? Well, the budget constraints, it's an obstacle that every consumer face. So everyone, of course, if with look at this graph, everyone would like to have a highest utility level that they want, right? So if I ask you which point would you like, of course, everyone will agree that we should choose point Z because this is the higher utility level than any point at this difference curve. However, not everyone can do that. Okay, there is a constraint, there is an obstacles. Okay, so in this case, we call it a budget constraint. Yeah, and in here, okay, um, the budget concerns, it's the worker consumption of goods and leisure that it is of course constrained by not only income, like in microeconomics, but also by the time. Okay, so time and income is, I mean, like in reality, I want to buy something, but the money or the my wage, it's not enough. So that's my constraint. I want to sleep more, but in a day, we only have 24 hours and we also have to work. So I have a time constraint as well. Okay. And in terms of the equations, okay, so this is the equations here. Okay. So we have C here, C equals to WH plus V. Okay, let me explain to you one by one, where H here is the number of hours that the person will allocate to the labor markets. Okay, so the time that I would like to spend for working. Okay, how many hours that I would like to work? Well, that's H. Let's say 8 hours. So the H equal to 8 hours. And W here, okay, it's the hourly wage rate. So my salary, my income in 1 hour. Let's say in 1 hour, I get, let's say, $10, okay, or $20. So $20 multiplied by 8. So in one day, I will get $160. Okay. What about fee? What is fee? Fee is my non-labor income. Okay. So what is the non-labor income? For example, non-labor income, it's like a property income. If I have a property that it can be rent for someone else. Let's say I have a house, and the house here, I rent it to someone else, and this someone who rent my house pay, monthly to me. Okay, and that is the property income. And or perhaps I got the dividends. Okay, let's say I have uh, uh, I own, let's say I own one of the company, and yearly or monthly I got the dividends, or perhaps it's just simply money from my parents. Okay, it is called non-labor income, or an income that we get not by working. Okay, you get this income by from something else or from someone else. Okay, we have to differentiate that. All right, so the assumptions: workers does not save and spend all her income for consumptions. Okay, and also the wage rate is constant. Okay, let's say in 1 hour I get $20, or in 1 hour I get $30, or in 1 hour I get $10. Okay, so it's constant; it doesn't change. Okay, and we have also T here. What is T? T is a total hours, okay, total time that can be allocated, okay, to of each of these activities, which is H and L. Okay, as I said to you, H here is the number of hours that the person will allocate to work. Okay, and L here, it's the leisure time. Okay, it's the number of hours that the person will allocate for leisure activity. Okay, including sleeping. So what is uh, the total time of leisure plus the total time for working? If we add up, we get T. the total time, right? We substitute T equal to H plus L into this equation, okay? And then we get this C equal to W, okay? Multiplied by T minus L plus the non-labor income fee, okay? I hope everyone can, visualize how from T equal to H plus L, when we substitute to H in this equation, we will get this. If not, you can ask. And we just, rearranging this formula, okay, this equation, just rearranging these equations, and we get C equal to WT plus V minus WL, okay? And this is the graph for budget constraint. When you look at this graph, okay, this straight diagonal line here, it represents the budget line, okay? And at point E here, we call it the endowment point, okay? E is the endowment point. It indicates that if the person decides not to work at all, so you don't work, you will be here, okay? Will you get money? Yes. Will you be able to consume? Yes. From where? From fee, which is the non-labor income, okay? And as I explained to you already, non-labor income can be originated from anywhere, like property income, or simply just the money from your parent. Let's say if the person is willing to give up 1 hour of leisure, okay, just 1 hour of leisure, you want to sacrifice 1 hour of leisure to work. Let's say at this point, okay, you sacrifice 1 hour. Okay, so from T here, move to this point. Okay, then of course, sorry, and of course you will be able to consume more. Okay, you will be able to consume more consumption compare if you don't work at all. Okay, so this point, of course, you will get higher consumption, but you will have to sacrifice your time of leisure, let's say 1 hour. Okay, therefore each additional hour of leisure that the person is willing to give up allows the person to buy an additional $W worth of goods. This is what I just explained to you. If the worker gives up all leisure activity, I mean you don't sleep at all, okay, you will be at this point. Okay, you will be at this point. Here, okay, you can buy a very expensive stuff. You can buy a lot of stuff, okay, with a expensive value, but you don't sleep at all. Okay, I know in reality it's impossible, but theoretically everything is possible. Okay, whether you don't work at all, you can still consume something, okay, from, let's say, the money from your parents, or perhaps along the way here, okay, you can adjust your consumption level. The higher you consume, the less time of leisure that you have to sacrifice. Sorry, the more leisure time that you have to sacrifice. But theoretically, it is possible that you don't have a leisure time. You just, you just working all the time. And by working all the time, you can consume a very expensive products. Okay. Let's mix that with the indifference curve. Okay, so we have indifference curve, we have a budget line. Let's mix that. Okay, so in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Sorry, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Okay, we have point A, we have point P, we have point E, and we have point F, and also at the last we have point Y. Okay, remember the blue line here is the what is it? Well, the budget line. Okay, in here, okay, the worker would like, or let's say the optimal combination of consumptions and leisure is at point P. Okay, here at point P, where he can spend his money at $500. Okay, so it means that he works, he gets $500 for his wage. Okay, and he used all his wage for consumption, which is equal to $500, and he has 70 hours of leisure time. Okay, why not in point A? Why point A is not optimal? He has, if we compare to point A and with point P, in point A, he can earn more, which is $1,100. The reason is that point A in here perhaps will give more consumption to this worker, okay, but his indifference curve is lower than the indifference curve in the U star here. Okay, if you compare to U0 here. And of course, at point A, even though he has more consumption, 1,100, but he has a very little time of leisure. Okay, less than 70 hours compared to point P. In point P, yes, you're only able to consume at $500, but he has more leisure time and he has a higher indifference curve here. What about point Y? Would you like to pick point Y? Of course, everyone would like to choose point Y, where the consumption is high, 1,100, and also he has 70 hours of leisure. But is it possible? No, point Y is not possible. Why? Because it is above the budget line. So in this framework, the only place that can be allocated, okay, the only place that can be allocated in this graph is not beyond the budget line or the budget constraint. So point Y, this is everyone's dream, but it is impossible to do this because it is way beyond the budget line. Point P, okay, it's the tangen, okay, it is the tangen of the budget line. It is still possible, okay, but in here it is possible at point A, but you will have a lower level of utility. Okay, now what happens if there is a change in the non-labor income? Let's say you already work, you have a constant wage, but your parent give you more money. Let's say previously your parent give you, let's say $100 for each month or each week, but now your parent give you an additional $100 each week, like in this example. So for example, at E0 here, this is your initial point. Your parent give you $100, okay, and you choose the combinations of working. It's P0 Okay, you can consume at $200 and you have 70 hours of leisure time. But let's say your parent gives you more money. Okay, and it goes up from E0 to E1 here. Okay, and in this case, okay, you will be able to move from P0 to P1. Okay, but what is the difference between panel A and panel B? In panel A here, okay, if you think that leisure is a normal good, okay, you have to, so if you forget what is a normal and inferior good, you have to look that again from the book. Okay, I will not give you in detail. Okay, but in this case, if you think that leisure is normal good, when you get more non-labor income, you will consume more leisure time. Okay, so you don't have to work hard anymore. Okay, you can add an additional hours of leisure. But if you think inferior good is a leisure, leisure is an inferior good, it's going to be the other way around. When you have an additional non-labor income, okay, you will um, you will spend less, or you will even sacrifice more of your leisure hour in order to work more. Okay, so that's the difference. Usually people just when they get more money, uh, from this perspective, it's the non-labor income. People will, you know, tend to relax more rather than to work more. But in other cases, perhaps people who like to work, even though they earn more money, even though this is from the non-labor income, people will tend to sacrifice more leisure time just to work more. Well, it depends on the person. Okay, that is what happened for the non-labor income. And what happened if there is a change in the wage rate? So, for example, in 1 hour, I get $10, for example. Okay, but my wage has been increased from $10 in 1 hour to $20 in 1 hour. I will get more money, right? So this is what happened to the budget line. Okay, the budget line here, it's going to be shift from the flatter one here to the steeper one here. Okay, as we can see here, my wage start from 10, then it increased to $20. Okay, in here, okay, first I spend, I choose at point P here, where I get 70 here, 70 hours of leisure. And then I move to point R here, where I get 75, you know, leisure time. And in this case, okay, and in this case, when I get more money, I will tend to have more time for leisure. What about in this case? Okay, it's the story is the same from P to R. From P to R here, it's because I have, my wage has been increased. Okay, from $10 to $20 in 1 hour. But the story is different. So what is the story here? Well, by using this graph, okay, I have to modify it a little bit because this is, there is P to R. There is a missing link here, which I can show you here. Okay. So in previous graph, I just explained to you from P to R. There is a missing link, which is point Q, which I haven't explained. In here, okay, This is the complete picture. So from P to R has a two-stage move. Okay, the wage increase generates two effects. Okay, in microeconomics, there are two effects: the income effects and the substitution effects. Okay, the wage increase generates two effects. It increases the worker's income and it raises the price of leisure. Okay, the move from P to Q, okay, from P to Q in both graph, P to Q here as well, it called income effect. The move from Q to R, it is called substitution effects. Okay. Okay, so the two important concepts here that we can learn, that an increase in the wage rate increase hours of work, that is correct, if the substitution effect dominates the income effects. Okay, let me say that again. An increase in wage rate increases hours of work if the substitution effect is higher or dominates the income effects. And also, an increase in the wage rate decrease hours of work if the income effect dominates the substitution effects. So which one is it? Okay, as we can see here, income effect dominates. So more income effect rather than substitution effects. In here, move from P to Q, it's 70 to 85, which is 15 more hours. But the substitution effect from Q to R is only 10 hours. It means that the income effect, the move from P to Q, is higher than the move from Q to R. In substitution effect, in panel B here, the move from P to Q is lower than the move from Q to R. It means that the substitution effect dominates. Okay, so in this case, it depends on the person's, again, whether the increase in the wage is depends on the income effects or more to the substitutions effect. Okay, any questions? No. Okay. Okay, so far I only talk about the budget line, the indifference curve, and what happened when the non-labor income increase, when the wage rate increase. Okay, what about the labor supply? Okay, the labor supply itself. Okay, after we plot this graph, after we analyze this graph, we can draw the labor supply curve. Okay, this figure, okay, the left panel, which is here, okay, illustrates the individual optimal consumption bundle at various wage rate. Okay, so let's say this line, okay, the lowest line here, when the wage rate equal to $13 in 1 hour. The middle one, it's when the wage equal to 20, and the top one here, when the wage equal to 25. Okay, as I explained to you already, when there is a higher wage rate, okay, people will tend to consume more. Okay, regardless whether they want to work or not. Okay, and in this case, the $10 wage is the it's the person's reservation wage. So it's the initial. Okay, sorry, not here. Okay, at E here. Okay, it's the reservation wage. And in this case, at wage equal to 10, this person will be unconcerned about whether he's going to work or not. Okay. As a result, this person contributes 0 hours. So this person only want to let's say to have a leisure activity. That's all. Okay. If the wage rate is equal to 10. Okay. When the wage rate increase, let's say from to 13, okay, then this person will begin to think to allocate their time for working. Okay. When she works, let's say 20 hours, he or she will get $13. So if the wage rate 13, he or she will allocate 20 hours of working. If the wage rate is $20, he or she will allocate their time, okay, let's say 40 hours to work. Okay, I got more money, I will have to spend more time. Okay. However, if your wage is 25, okay, you, however, you will allocate less time for working, and instead you will have more time for leisure. What happened here? First, when you get more wage, you will allocate more time for working. But when the time, so when your wage is getting higher, your time allocations for working is decreased. What happened here? Okay. Well, it's simply because when you are getting a higher wage from your previous one, okay, it means that I'm still talking about panel A here. It means that your position here, it's already at the top level. And at the top level, you have your staffs, right? You have your people that, you know, that previously um, you have to do it by your own. But at this point here, you don't have to work the technical stuff. You can just, delegate your job to your staff, and by doing that, you can have more leisure time with a higher wage. Okay, because when you are working, you're not going to be staff forever, right? You will be staff, and then you will be a manager, and then you will, let's say, you will become like the boss of the company, okay, by the time, okay. And when you move from the staff to the manager, of course there will be a wage increase, okay, based on your position. Okay. And when we drag this, okay, when we drag this to the supply curve here, this is the individual supply curve. Okay, it will looks like this. So first here, 10, this is where the people, let's say the wage rate is at 10. So in this graph, it's in panel A, it's like this. In panel B, it's simply like this. So he doesn't want to allocate the time for work because the wage obviously is too low. Okay. And when the wage rate is 13, he will allocate more time for works. Okay. The wage increase to 20, he will allocate more time for work. So from 20 to 40. Okay. But when the wage moves to 25, it will be bent over. Okay. It will be, bent like this. He has more wage, but he will decrease the number of hours to work. Okay. So this is what happened. Okay. For the individual labor supply curve. Okay. It depends on your position. It depends on the wage structure as well. Okay. So in time, okay, when you are already in top position, you will earn more money, but you will have more time for leisure. and less time for works because you delegate your jobs for your staff. Okay. All right. So this is the market labor supply. The market labor supply, it's on panel C here. Okay. So this is the sum between this labor supply of Alice, the individual labor supply of Alice, and the labor supply, the individual labor supply of Brenda. Okay. Brenda here, she has a steeper labor supply compared to Alice. Okay. So in this case, the labor supply, the market labor supply here is simply the sum between HA, okay, and plus HB of the Alice and Brenda's individual labor supply. And we assume that in the world here, in this market, there are only 2 persons, Alice and Brenda. Okay, so that is about the market labor supply. Where does this comes from? This comes from the indifference curve and the budget line. Okay, so the intersections between the budget line, the optimal position within the budget line, and the indifference curve that creates individual labor supply. Okay, like this one. Okay, so this is budget line. This is indifference curve. Okay, and it creates this line. Okay, for each individual, for Alice, for Brenda. Okay, and we assume in the world only has there only have 2 people, Alice and Brenda, and when we combine this, it will create the market labor supply. Any questions? Any questions?
Not yet, Prof.
Not yet. Okay, this is the end of the labor supply. Now I will talk about the labor demand. But before we start, I would like to have a break, just like 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, perhaps people would like to go to the toilet or something. Okay, let's have a break. How long? 3 minutes? 5 minutes? Anyone?
3 minutes is enough.
Sorry, how long?
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay, 3 minutes. Okay, 3 minutes. We will start in 3 minutes. Okay. If anyone would like to go to the toilet or something, okay. I will not go anywhere. I'm just going to close the video. I will be back in 3 minutes. Okay, everyone is back. Everyone is back now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, let's continue. Now I will continue to explain about the labor demand. Okay. Okay, so when we discuss about the labor supply, okay, we analyze the factor that determine how many workers choose to enter the labor market and how many hours those workers are willing to rent to the employers. Okay. However, labor market it's not just determined by the willingness of worker from the supply side, but it also determined the labor market outcomes also determined by the willingness of the firm to hire those workers. So let me get back to the previous slides in the very first beginning. So in here, when we talk about labor supply, we are talking about this side. Okay, so this is where the labor supply, where the household is the producer. Right now, we are going to talk about labor demand, where the firm here act as a consumer. So we are talking about in this part. Okay, whether the firm or how many workers that the firm would like to hire. Okay, the hire would like to hire through the factor market. Okay, so that is what we are going to discuss in the labor demand. Okay, since we are going to talk about this side, okay, the firms here, we are going to start with the goal of the firm, okay, or the activity um, of the firm in this case. The activity of the firm is to produce something, right? Firm doing a production, okay, in order to create a product to be sold in the goods and services market. So in order to analyze the labor demand, we have to start from the production function, okay, and um, in here the activity um, of the firm is to produce something. And in order to produce something, of course, the firm needs an employee or a worker, which is denoted E, okay? Denoted with E in this case. So Q here, it's the firm's output or the product, okay, that the firm create or the firms produce. And Q here can only be able to be produced if the firm have E. In this case, it's the employee, the number of employee, and also K is the capital. Okay, so we have labor or E in this case, and we have also capital or K in this case. Okay, so the production function specifies how much output is produced by any combination of labor and capital. When we talk about labor supply, okay, we start with the preference of the workers. When we talk about the preference of workers, okay, we talk about marginal utility. Why we use the concept of marginal utility? Because the goal of a worker is to maximize their utility level, right? In this case, we are using marginal product. Okay, marginal product, as I explained to you, marginal means it's an additional. Okay, marginal product of labor, it means that the change in output, okay, the change in the number of productions resulting from hiring an additional worker. Okay, ceteris paribus. Okay, keep all other factors constant. Similarly, the marginal product of capital, okay, denoted MPK, it's the change in output resulting from a 1 unit increase in the capital stock, ceteris paribus. So we assume that the marginal product of both labor and capital are positive numbers. So it means that when we increase the number of labor or when we increase the number of capital, it will give the firm an additional output or more output. Okay, so that is the meaning of the assumptions that the marginal product of labor and capital are a positive number. Let me give you an illustration here. Okay, so we have this table. Okay, so let's say the firm do not have employee, do not have worker. So how many units that the firm can produce? It's obviously 0. Okay, because you don't have a worker to produce the output that you desire. Okay, that the firm desires. Let's say the firm hire 1 worker. Okay, the firm, for example, can produce 11 units of product. Okay, so in this case, the marginal product of labor, it is equal to 11. Where did I get 11? So it's from 0 to 11 by hiring from 0 worker to 1 worker. Okay, so this is, the difference between 0 and 11 is simply 11. What about the IPE? The IPE is the average product of labor or of employee. Okay, I get the same 11 units as well. Where do I get this number? It's simply 11 divided by 1. Okay, so the average product of employment, it shows us the average number of product that can be produced by 1 worker. In this case, because we only have 1 workers, 11 divided by 1, it's simply 11. Okay, what happens if we add 1 more worker? So from 1 to 2 workers. Now, the firm can produce 27 units of output, and the MPE from 11 to 27 is 16, and the APE is 13.5, where 27 divided by 2. Okay, we can see that it's, there is an increase here. There is an increase from 11 to 16, and there is also an increase in APE from 11 to 13.5. Okay, we haven't talked about this. I will talk about the value of MPE and value of APE later. Okay, let's focus on MPE and APE first. Okay, but when we increase the number of workers that can be hired, let's say from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 until to 9, at first the MPE will increase. Okay, but at some point, let's say from 3 to 4 here, the MPE, the marginal product of labor or the employee, begin to decrease. Okay, so 11 to 16 still increase, 16 to 20 still increase, but 20 to 19 it begins to decrease. And then we increase the more workers. Okay, we hire more workers. The MPE will also declining. Even though the Q here, the units, the number of products that can be produced by the firm is still increasing. What happened here? Is it happen also in the APE? Yes, it also happened in APE. At some point, when the firm decide to hire more workers, the APE will start declining. Okay, in the beginning, it increases, but then at some point, it decreasing. Okay. Let me give you an illustration by using the graph based on this table. Okay. Okay. So here's what happened. Okay. When you increase the number of workers, okay, when the firm increase the number of workers, eventually the number of output increase. That is correct. Okay. Just like in this table. However, the marginal product here and also the average product here, it decreases. What happened here? Why the marginal product and the average product here is decreasing when you increase um, the number of workers that can be hired here? Okay, well, it is because we are talking in the short run analysis. Okay, in the short run analysis, this is what we call it. In the short run, okay, there will be a declining at some point of a marginal product and average product of labor. Why in the short run? Okay, why in the short run this happen? This marginal product of labor decreases at some point. Before I answer that, I would like to explain to you about this phenomenon. Okay, first the marginal product and the average product increases, and then at some point it decreases. This phenomenon, it is called the law of diminishing returns. Okay, the law of diminishing returns. I hope everyone have ever heard about this term, the law of diminishing returns. Okay, and it happens only at the short run. Why? Why it happened in the short run? Why it's not happening in the long run? Because, okay, let me get back to the previous slides. Okay, as I mentioned to you, in order to produce output here, okay, the firm needs number of labor and the firms need a capital. Okay. However, in the short run, the number of capital, which is K in our case here, it is assumed to be fixed. Let me say that again. In the short run, okay, the number of capital, it is assumed to be fixed. What does that mean? It means that the firm in the short run cannot increase or decrease the number of capital. What is capital in this case? Capital can be anything. For example, like land, machine, or other physical inputs. Okay. For example, like a factory. Okay. So that is capital. But in the short run, the firm can increase or decrease the number of labor, the number of E. Okay. But the firm cannot increase the number of capital. So that's why, okay, that is why when you increase more workers, okay, at some point, okay, the marginal product, sorry, why it's gone? Okay. Okay, so at some point, okay, when the firm in the short run increase the number of workers, okay, the marginal product and also the average product, it's going to be decreased because you can visualize that, you know, the space to work, okay, the space to work for each worker, it's going to be, you know, so small and it's going to be so crowded in the short run. because you cannot extend, let's say, your factory, or you cannot extend, you cannot buy more land. Let's say the firm is in the business of agriculture, okay, but in the short run they cannot, buy more land or buy more machine or buy more factory in the short run. Okay, that's why it is happening. So how do they decide? How does the firm decide to, like, how many workers in the short run that the firm should hire? Okay, well, let's start from here, that uh, the goal of the producer is the goal of the firm is profit maximization. Okay, so that's the basic goal for the firm. It's to maximize their profit. But in order to maximize their profit, okay, we have the following equations. Okay, so profit equal to P multiplied by Q. What is this? P is the price of the output. Q is the number of output that has been produced by the firm. So P multiplied by Q, that is actually the total revenue. Okay, the total revenue of the firm minus WE minus RK. Okay, what is this? W, it's the wage that has to be paid by the firm to the worker, and E here, it's the number of the employee or the labor. So let's say, let's image yourself as the firm or the owner of the firm. Okay, let's say you hire a worker and you pay the worker, let's say $20 in 1 hour, and you have 5 workers. Okay, in this case you have to pay $100 in 1 hour, right, in total. Okay, because each person received $20 in 1 hour, multiplied by the number of employee, which, for example, 5, it's going to be equal $100 for 1 hour. Okay, what about RK? Okay, RK here, R is the price of the capital. We usually it usually denote R. R means rent. Okay, and K is the number of the capital. Okay, so let's say you have a land, or you have a building that you use for producing a product, for production activity, and in a month you have to pay the rent in order to be able to use that building as your factory. Okay, so that is the price of the capital. R is the price of the capital, and K is the number of the capital itself. Okay, the assumptions: P is unaffected by how much output that this firm produce and sell. W, which is the wage for the labor. R is the rent or the price of the capital, are also unaffected by how much labor and capital that the firm hires. Therefore, it is perfectly competitive firm. Okay, so we have the value of marginal product and the value of average product. Okay, so that is from the last table. So this is this one. Okay, the two last column on the right side here, the value of MPE and the value of APE. Okay, let me get back to you the formula again. The VMPE, the value of marginal product of labor, it's the price of the product multiplied by the marginal product of labor. Similarly, VAPE, the value of average product of labor, is the price of the product multiplied by the average product of labor. As we can see from the last example, P is equal to $2. This is an example. Okay, the price or P is equal, the price of the output is equal to $2, and then $2 is multiplied by the MPE and APE, and we get this value. Okay, so let's, for example, 11 MPE multiplied by 2, and we get the VMPE, which is equal to 22. Similarly, for the VAPE, let's say we have 2 workers. Okay, we can produce 27 units. The APE is 13.5 multiplied by 2, and we get 27. All right. Okay. Again, the goal here, the goal of the firm is to maximize the profit. Okay, and the requirement, okay, the requirement to have profit maximization, okay, like the requirement of profit maximizations is when MR equal to MC. What is MR? MR is the marginal revenue. MC, it's the marginal cost. That is from introductions of microeconomics. Okay, so when you see MR equal to MC, it means that the requirement of profit maximization. And then we drag this concept MR equal to MC as the requirement of profit maximization to the labor demand concept for the short run decision. Okay, MR actually it is simply to MPE. Okay, and it is equal to the cost, the marginal cost, which is equal to W. Okay. In other words, at the point where the firm maximizes its profits, the marginal gain from hiring an additional workers equal to the cost of that hire. Okay, and it does not pay to further expand the firm because the value of hiring workers is failing. That's why the MPE is declining. I will explain to you with the illustration. Okay. So let's get back to our example here. Okay. Here, we cannot really see the, I mean, if we use this table, okay, if we use this table, the firm still cannot decide how many workers that the firm should hire. However, when we extend that, when we extend this table, and we can retract the total revenue, the marginal revenue, the total cost, and the marginal cost, then the firm can decide now how many workers that the firm should hire. Okay. And how do I get the TR? TR is the total revenue. Total revenue equals to P, which is the price, which is equal to $2, multiplied by the Q. So $2 multiplied by 11, we get 22. 27 multiplied by 2, we get 54. 47 multiplied by 2, we got $94. That is the total revenue for the firm. What about the marginal revenue? Again, marginal, it's the additional. Okay, from 0 to 22, we get 22. 22 to 54, we got 32. 54 to 94, we got 40. Okay, and then you can do the same for the rest of the MR, the marginal revenue. What about the total cost? How do I get this number? Okay, remember from the previous slides, let's say the wage in the labor market is $22. So each worker will receive a wage that is equal $22. Now, when the wage is $22 and the number of employee is equal to 1, then the total cost for the firm is $22. 22 multiplied by 1. Okay. When the firm hire 2 employees, then the total cost for the firm is $44. $22 multiplied by 2. If the number of labor is 3, then 22 multiplied by 3 equal to 66. Okay. As we can see here, the marginal cost here, additional cost because of the firm hire more worker, is simply the difference between 44 and 22, 66 and 44, 88 and 66, and so on. It stays constant. It stays the same. 22, 22, and so on. Okay. And based on the requirement, okay, based on the requirement of the profit maximization, okay, the requirement of profit maximization is when MR equal to MC. Okay. Well, we have the option here where the MR equal to MC. Okay. Either the firm choose to hire only 1 worker, so MR 22 equal to MC 22, or the firm choose to hire 8 workers, which is MR equal to MC 22, the same. Okay. So which one to choose to maximize the worker? To maximize the profit. The firm actually can decide. In this case, can decide, as many as workers that the firm would like to hire actually. However, okay, 8 workers is the maximum here. Is the maximum that the firm can hire in order to receive a maximum profit. Okay. What happens if the firm only want to decide to hire 5 workers? It's okay. It's fine. Why it is fine? Because the marginal revenue is still higher than the marginal cost. 44 is greater than 22. Okay. Is it okay? It's fine. Is the profit maximum? Well, the profit, it's not maximum, but you still get the profit. Okay. Is it good? It is good, but it's not optimal. Okay. Why it's not optimal? Because by hiring more worker, up to 8 workers, okay, the firm can get more, can produce more goods. In this case, can produce more Q, 122 instead of just 83. That's why at this point, this is the maximum. Okay, this is the maximum number of labor that the firm can hire in order to receive a profit maximization. Let's say the firm decides to hire more than 8 workers, let's say 9 workers. Can the firm do that? Of course, the firm can do that. But, okay, the marginal revenue is less than the marginal cost. So that's why even though the firm can hire more than 8 workers, in our example here is 9, it is not worth it to do that. Okay, unless you are doing a charity. Okay, if you are doing a charity, okay, as a company, you can do that. But remember, the goal of the firm here is having a profit maximization by uh, doing a production activities. And in this case, 8 workers is the optimal point where the firm can hire a labor. The firm will produce 122 units, okay, of product, where the marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, where it is the requirement to have a profit maximization. Okay. Any questions? Is there any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So that's as long as you are in this case, as long as MR equal to MC, okay, as that's the requirement to maximize profit, and that is the optimal point. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me explain to you. So this is actually uh, um, the short run demand curve for labor. Okay, the short run demand curve for labor. So what is the story in this graph? Okay, so at point A, okay, at point A, when let's say when the wage is 22, okay, the firm decide to hire 8 workers. So just like in our last example, okay, in this example, the wage or the cost to hiring a labor, to hiring one labor, is $22. So okay, so when the wage is equal to 22, okay, when the wage equal to 22, the firm will only hire up to 8 workers. Okay, so only at here, okay, 8 workers. Let's say the wage rate or the income for the wage, sorry, not the income, the wage in the labor market decreases from 22 to 18. Okay, and when the wage decreases, it means that the firm will have a lower marginal cost, or in other words, the firm can hire more workers because the wage, the price of labor is decreasing from 22 to 18. Therefore, when the price or the wage rate from 22 decreases to 18, the firm would like to hire one more workers. So from 8 to 9. Okay, that is the movement from A to B. Okay, it only caused by the price or the wage rates of the workers. So let's say from B to A, that is going to happen when the price or the wage of the workers increases from 18 to 20. Okay, so that's the firm have to, have to decrease the number of workers. But if the wage decreases from 22 to 18, that is the movement from A to B. Okay, the firm can decide to hire one additional workers. Okay, that is the movement from A to B or to B to A. What about A to C? What happened here? Okay, A to C here, the wage does not change. Okay, the wage rate does not change, but the firm can hire more workers. What happened here? Well, actually, A to C, it only happens in the long run. Why it only happen in the long run? Because in the long run, firms can hire with the same wage rate, but with more people or more workers, okay, by expanding the firm's capital. For example, like the land, the factory, or the machine, okay, it only happens, the change in the capital only happen in the long run. Therefore, in the long run, for example, like the movement from A to C, the wage rate stays the same, but the number of workers can um, can be extended, can be increased. Okay, because the number of capital is also increased, and that is what we are going to talk right now. The employment decision in the long run. Okay, the employment decision in the long run, as I told you, that the number of capital is not fixed. Okay, the firm can expand or shrink the plant size or the factory size, and also the machine can be the number of the machine can be increased as well. Therefore, in the long run, the firm maximize a profit by choosing both how many workers and how many capital that should the firm invest to. Okay. In this case, we are using a similar graph like the one in the labor supply, but the name is different. Okay. In here, it looks like indifference curve, but it is not indifference curve. It is called isoquant. Okay. And as I explained to you before, since right now the firm can have to decide how many employment that the firm should hire, or the how many capital that the firm should rent in this case, then we have to uh, talk about the marginal product of labor and capital. Okay, as I already explained to you, marginal product of labor is the additional of output. It's DQ here divided by DE. It means that additional output, marginal product of labor, it's an additional output that can be produced because the firm decide to add one additional of labor. Okay, that's the marginal product of labor. The marginal product of capital, it's similar. It's the additional number of output that can be produced because the firm decide to rent one unit of capital. Capital can be anything, okay? Can be a machine, can be a land, can be a factory, okay? Or, equipment, something like that, okay? Again, the relationship between MPE and MPK here, yeah, is negative. It's like the marginal product of consumption and leisure activity, okay? It is negative. When you have more capital, it means that you have to sacrifice, okay, the labor. When you have more labor, you have to sacrifice the capital, okay? So that's, between X and Y, it's going to pull each other, okay? Let's say delta K here from Y to X, it means that you have to decrease the number of employment in order to increase the number of capital. And if you move to X to Y, you have to sacrifice the capital in order to get more worker. Okay. And in this case, okay, why it is called isoquant? Okay. Iso means the same. Quants mean the quantity. So the quantity of the product that produced by the firm is iso or is the same. What does that mean? It means that either you choose at point X or either you choose at point Y, the number of output that can be produced by the firm is the same, which is equal to Q0. Okay? All right? And the higher of the isoquant quant here, okay, so let's say the movement from Q0 to Q1, the higher that the quantity of the product that the higher that the number of the product can be produced. Okay, that is the movement from Q0 to Q1. All right, that is isoquant. Now the isocost. Okay, the isocost here, um, it's like a budget constraint, but it is not a budget constraint. Isocost means the firm's cost of production. Remember, ISO means the same. So cost, it's the cost, okay? So the cost is the same, okay? So this is looks like a budget line, but it's not a budget line. When we talk about the budget line, when the budget line goes higher, okay, it represents the income of the consumer is also getting higher. But in this case, it's not. It's the other way around. When the ISO costs go higher, for example, C0 move to C1 here, okay, the cost of the production is getting higher. All right. So when we mix that with the isoquant, we will get this picture. Okay. We have 3 points, points A, P, and B. Either you choose at point A, P, or B, you will still produce the same amount of product, which is equal to Q0 units. Okay. So, but the question is here is which point that maximize the profit of the firm. Okay. Which point that maximize the profit of the firm? Is it point A, P, or B? Okay. Well, there are 2 ways in order to get profit maximizations. If you are a firm, either you increase the price of the goods to get more revenue, or to minimize your cost, or we call it the cost minimization process. If you increase the price of the output, the price of Q, yes, you can get more total revenue, but you know what determines that in the market, the factors that going to determine whether your product is going to be sold or not, it's not by the price, but it's also by the decisions of the consumer, right? If the price is too high, of course, people or the consumer will leave you. They don't want to buy your product because it's simply too expensive. And sometimes price cannot be controlled in the output market because it has been determined by the market price. If you increase your price of your product, people will will swift to another producer or another firm. You will lose your customer because you increase your price. Okay, that's why sometimes it's not the best decision for the firm to um, to increase the price in order to maximize profit. But what can the firm do is to minimize the cost. All right, in here, okay, as I told you, the firm either can choose point A, P, or B. However, the firm can have cost minimization in order to maximize their profit is when the firm choose at point P. Okay. At point P, the firm have 175 units of capital and the firm hire 100 employment. Okay. At point B, okay, for example, at point B, the firm has lower capital, but it has more workers, but the cost here is higher than the cost of production at point B. Similarly, at point A, the firm has more capital, but less workers, but it has more cost of production compared to point B. How can I say that? Because point A and point B is intersects the higher ISO cost line. Okay, the higher ISO cost line, as I explained to you, the higher ISO cost line, okay, the higher the cost that the firm encountered. And here, A and B lies at the higher ISO cost line compared to P with the lower ISO cost line. All right. Any questions? Any questions? No? Okay, so this is what I talk about what is it when I talk about the decisions about how to maximize the profit is either to increase the price of the product or to do a cost minimization. Okay. I told you that when you increase the price, sometimes it's not a good decision. Why? Because price usually has been determined by the market. When everyone, let's say, sell a food equal to $5, okay, a burger of $5, for example. But if you increase the price, just for your firm, let's say from $5 to $7, people will, you will not have a customer in this case, because $7 it might be too expensive to buy a burger. People will move or will go to another firm, to another producer that still has a price of burgers equal to $5 instead of $7. Okay, so that's why P in here, okay, P in here, it's not cannot be changed. Okay, it is determined by the price market. Okay, determined by the market. So you cannot choose your own price. Otherwise, you will lose your customer. So in this case, okay, what happened to the movement from MC0, this is marginal cost of 0, to marginal cost of 1? Okay. So in this case, this is what it looks like. Okay, what it looks like when there is a wage reduction of the a wage reduction of the worker, or the wage rate of the workers decreases. Okay, and when there is a wage decrease, okay, when there is a wage decreases, as I mentioned you before, that of course the firm would like to hire more workers, right? Because the price or the cost of the labor will be cheaper than before, since the wage rate decreases. And in this case, this situation can be depicted by the shift between the shift from MC0, the marginal cost here, from MC0 to MC1. Okay, and when we illustrate this situation by using ISO cost and ISO quant, That is simply from the movement from point P to point R. Well, in the beginning, okay, when in the beginning the firm only hire 100 employment, okay. Sorry, when in the beginning the producer only able to produce 100 product by using 25 employment, okay. But at the end, because there is a wage reduction, okay, the firm can hire more workers from 25 to 50, and um, the number or the amount of output that can be produced is also increased to 150. Okay, and this change can be translated to the long run demand curve for labor. Okay, when there is a reduction in wage, the firm will hire more workers, and because of that, okay, and because of that, the number of output that can be produced is also increased. So what is the difference between the long run and the short run demand curve? The short run demand curve, okay, it's steeper, and the long run demand curve looks flatter. What does it mean? It means that in the long run, the demand curve is more elastic than in the short run. Why it is more elastic in the long run? Because in the long run, the firm can expand or can change the number of capital that can be rented. Okay. Any questions? No. Okay. So that's all from me. Okay. That's the explanations about the labor supply and labor demand. Okay. Is there any question?
No, sir,
No?
but
Okay.
this PowerPoint, may I get or not?
Yes. There is also I also upload these slides in my class. Okay. You can get my module, which have more explanation, and also I upload these slides in my class as well.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any more questions? No?
No, sir.
Okay. If not, I will end here. Okay. I will end here, and you will meet again later, maybe in 1 hour, right? You will have another course with Mr. Romi, explaining about the labor market equilibrium. So I have already explained to you about the labor supply and labor demand, and he will talk about the labor market equilibrium, which is the combination between labor supply and labor demand. And he also will talk about the empirical evidence about the labor market outcomes in the real world. So you will see more data between the data from the US and the data from Indonesia, okay, which I believe it will be more interesting rather than talking about the theoretical parts. Okay, so thank you very much for having me. Okay, I will end my session right now. If you have any question, please email me, or you can contact me yes, by email. Okay, and I will write my email in the chat room. Okay, you can contact me at any time. Okay, that's my email. Okay, if you have any questions or you would like to discuss more about it. Okay, well, thank you very much for the participations. I hope it's going to be useful for you. And my session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.